A 17-year-old Iris was standing in the hallway of her high school talking to her then boyfriend about what they wanted to do when they graduated and became adults. He suggested that we get married and have kids as soon as we graduate. And I said no, and I told him of this elaborate 5-year plan that I had to go to school and get a good job before I settled down. And to that, he replied, well, heck, in 5 years, you can have 5 kids. And so it's been 5 years since then, and as far as I know, I don't have any kids. But I was able to follow down a different path, one where I looked for opportunities that were available to a 17-year-old girl. And I jumped on them, and I responded to them, and I followed through with them. And by doing that, I'm able to tell you the story that I can today. The first opportunity that came to me was in the form of a flyer that was hanging in the hallway shortly after I'd had that conversation with my boyfriend. It was for a scholarship program called Future Connect. Not only did Future Connect provide money for me to go to school, but they also told me about leadership and organizational skills that I needed in order to continue on with Future Connect's affiliate program called Carpe Mundi. Carpe Mundi is a scholarship program that takes students on various 3-month study abroad trips. And even though my mentor for Future Connect introduced me to the director of Carpe Mundi, she did not go easy on me during the interview process. She wanted to know every detail and ideal and emotional state of my life at that point in time. And so by the end of my 3-hour interview process, I was crying and I was late to class. But it was worth it because she liked me and I got accepted. My group went to Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. I got to see elephants and heads in trees and these girls from Cambodia who kept asking me if I was friends with Taylor Swift or not. But the most impactful part of this trip was when we went to Halong Bay in Vietnam. I got to see these karst formations, and I laid out on one of the rocks, and I ended up falling asleep. And I had this dream while I was asleep that these rocks were like trying to talk to me, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. It's like they were speaking a different language or something. And when I woke up, I knew this was like a very powerful thing because I was sober at the time. But so it convinced me to pursue, or at least entertain, this passion that I had had for rocks and geology my whole life. And so when I came back to the States, at that time I was a math major, I met with my academic advisor and I told him I want to take a geology class. And he said, well, no, Iris, you're a math major, you should take a math class. And I said, you're probably right, but I'm going to take a geology class. And 2 weeks in, I immediately fell in love, and I changed my major right then and there. My geology instructor told me about a program for minorities in STEM called LSAMP, which stands for the Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. They provide ongoing support for minorities in STEM by providing tutoring services and like building a group of people to keep coming back to, and as well as tell us about other opportunities that may be available to us in the future. And so remember them, I'm going to come back to them. My geology instructor also told the class about a program called STEMCs, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Student Experiences Aboard Ships. And when I first heard that, I got way too excited, and I shouted across the room, like, can you write my letter of recommendation for me? And he goes, we have to formalize this conversation, but yes, I will. I'm like, cool. And so I applied, and I got in, and STEMCs was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. They flew me out to North Carolina, where I got to meet the other students and the professors that were going to be sailing with us for 5 days on the RV Endeavor from North Carolina to Mississippi. And they taught us how scientists collect their data at sea, which was a realm of geology that I never thought was interesting before that day. And there's me holding a picture of concentrated plankton soup that we had just collected off the side of the boat. Part of the program had us conduct a like a mini research project that we came up with during our time on the boat. My project focused on identifying a changing climate in a sediment core that was collected around the same area by identifying these foraminiferal species in that core. And I fell in love with the ocean and with research and with the community that these two entities bring together. And before then, I thought that people who got PhDs were just crazy, but now I know that they're crazy and passionate. So, I also learned that flying fish actually exist. Thought that was fake. STEMCs not only set the path for this world of research that I didn't think was possible for me at that time, but they also made me competitive for another summer research experience that LSAMP told me about at Oregon State University that following summer. The mentor and the project that I was selected for took me out to sea again, but this time on the RV Oceanus in the Pacific Ocean. We sailed around the mouth of the Columbia River for 5 days collecting sediment cores, and we took them back to shore and evaluated them for flooding events that occurred at the end of the last ice age by identifying diatom species in these cores. So we looked at these cores for 10 weeks, and I got so impassioned by my research that I was able to present my research at the Ocean Sciences meeting just this last week in Portland. And I was also able to present about my time on the ship at the Geological Society of America's National Conference in Seattle this last October. And at these conferences, I was able to meet so many people that shared the same passions that I had, and I got to see old friends and meet new friends and learn about these topics that I never really knew anything about until that day. So up until this point, I was a student at Portland Community College. And so coming into, or when it was time for me to transfer to Portland State, I knew that I wanted to do research, but PSU doesn't have a ocean sciences or marine geology lab. So I decided to pursue a different passion that I had, or a different topic of geology that was interesting to me, which was paleoseismology. And so at the department-wide barbecue that the geology department threw, I was able to I had an opportunity to meet the faculty member that I wanted to work with, but for some reason I was shy that day. So I just whispered to my friend, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's her, and I'm fangirling in the corner, thought she was so cool. But my friend did something that I didn't expect. He grabbed me by the arm and he dragged me over to her and says, hi, this is Iris. She's interested in paleoseismology. And I'm like, you mother, the whole time. But it worked out. She invited me to join her lab's reading group where we would sit and read an academic paper every week. And if I enjoyed it, I could do a research project with her. So I took this story back to my mentors at LSAMP, and they told me, well, hey, Iris, if you're going to be doing research, you should join, you should apply to be a McNair Scholar. And I said, okay. And I applied and I was accepted without really knowing how big a deal it is to be a McNair Scholar. The McNair Scholars Program has students complete a undergraduate research work with the goal of having us apply and be admitted to a PhD program. And it is a nationally renowned program that is a complete honor to be a part of. So I tell you this story of the last 5 years of my life, not to brag, but to emphasize that I wasn't able to do all these things because I have a lot of money or because I'm really smart and have a great GPA. Because in reality, I have $200 in ADHD. I was able to do this because as I look back, I was able to do this because I picked up that first flyer for Future Connect, and I responded to it, and I jumped on it and I followed through with it. And anybody can do this. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be 17 and looking at a flyer. You could just check your email. Is there like a certain class that you've always found interesting that you want to take? Or is there volunteer work in your neighborhood that you find particularly important? Is there a meetup group that you find interesting, or a cultural night in your neighborhood that you've always found to be intriguing? It doesn't have to be your life's one true passion for it to be useful to you, to set you on this path. I only told you about the events in my life that went well for me, but there was a ton of opportunities that I let slip past me, and there was a ton that I let die. If 17-year-old Iris was looking at that flyer in the hallway and thinking in 5 years she's going to be giving this TED Talk on this stage talking about all this awesome stuff she's done, she would think that she was insane. She would think that it wasn't possible, and she'd be wondering why she's talking to herself in the third person. That Iris was afraid of titles like doctor and geologist and program director. But Future Connect taught me the fine art of cold calling that I use then and now and I will use forever. The contact information that you see on these fancy business cards are just for a person. Before I call or email somebody, I like to imagine them eating a burrito at their desk and like a little bit falls out onto their keyboard, because everybody does that. And yes, everybody is busy, but most people are willing to help out a kind and interested stranger. All you have to do is email them and say like, hi, I'm so-and-so, I do such and such, let's talk about blah, blah, blah. And when I meet them, they're usually like, who are you and how did you find me and why are you contacting me? But not in like an accusatory way. They think I'm insane, which is fine, because I mean, I am, but. Okay, so we find the opportunities that we want to pursue. We reach out for these opportunities, but now we actually have to follow through with these opportunities. And this part of the talk is just your classic grit tale, so I'll try not to like beat that dead horse too much. On paper, I'm not a good student. In my physics class, I struggled because I'm a girl, and I'm brown, and I'm short, and I want to do a man's work. But I got the help that I needed to do well in school, and I stood up to my physics bully. And I can really rock some field pants. But if I had gone along with my boyfriend's suggestion, and I hadn't reached out for these opportunities, and I hadn't jumped on them, and I hadn't followed through with them, and instead I had 5 babies in 5 years, I mean, let's face it, I really wouldn't be able to rock field pants as good as I can today. Thank you.